Welcome back. Breaking developments coming in. Prime Minister Modi has now put out a statement, and it's an emotive one and an important one, on a history-changing matter that is coming up before the country. He says, and I'm quoting, on the 16th of April, Parliament will be convened to discuss and pass an important bill that advances women's reservation. To describe this merely as a legislative exercise would be an understatement. It is a reflection of the aspiration of crores of women across India. It is an affirmation of the principle that has long guided our civilizational ethos, that society progresses when women progress. Women constitute nearly half of India's population. Their contributions to our nation are vast and invaluable. Today, India is witnessing remarkable achievements by women across every field, from science and technology to entrepreneurship, from sports to the armed forces, and from music to the arts. Women are at the forefront of India's progress. Over the years, sustained efforts have been made to create an enabling environment for women's empowerment. Greater access to education, improved health care, enhanced financial inclusion, and better access to basic amenities have strengthened the foundation of women's participation in economic and social life. Yet, their representation in the world of politics and legislative bodies has not always been commensurate with their role in society. This is particularly unfortunate because when women participate in administration and decision making, they bring with them the experiences and insights and enrich public discourse and improve the quality of governance. This opportunity to ensure women's reservation also resonates deeply with the spirit of our Constitution. This moment calls for collective action. It is not about any one government, party or individual. It is about the nation as a whole recognizing the importance of this step and coming together for Nari Shakti. That is why the passage of a bill for women's reservation should reflect the broadest possible consensus and be guided by the larger national interest. Unquote. That is the Prime Minister of this country who is making an appeal just days before the women's reservation bill reaches its final impact value in Parliament before it gets enacted next year in 2027. He is basically calling for a unanimous vote. That's what's happening here. Let me pick up that conversation. Joyita Basu, before we discuss the elections that are happening in Assam, Kerala and Puducherry, let's pick up this thought, because this is going to change the political roadmap of India forever. 33% reservation for women in Parliament. Potentially this paves the way for the same to be enacted in all the state assemblies. The Prime Minister wants it to be, it seems pretty indicative from this statement, he would like to see a unanimous vote, 10%, everybody in favor.
Yes, absolutely. And why not? When you're talking about the opposition parties, I don't see there is any, I don't think that they will be having any reservation about this particular bill which reserves seats for women. Although as a woman, I must say, Rishabh, that, I wish I wish this particular women's representation in Parliament had come without reservation, but that has not been the case. That would have been the ideal scenario where women get to participate in, be in the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha on their, without any this kind of a push. But the very fact that this was needed and that it took so many years, decades, I would say this is a watershed moment in the country's history, and for women's movement and for women of this country, including, I would say, even globally. Because, given that India is the largest democracy, most the populous democracy, what India does, it has an impact.
This fundamentally changes politics. I know there are elections. Elections happen in this country every 6 months, okay? And will happen in this country every 6 months. Somewhere or the other, an election is going on. Unless we can have the concept of one nation, one poll, in which case elections will happen every 2.5 years or every 5 years. You can, of course, argue that as we have the pros and cons of that. But Tanvi, 16th of April, it is watershed. And can we accept that you will have that one moment in which the Congress and the BJP will vote together on this?
100%, and looking forward to it. I've been one of the advocate for this for a very, very long period of time. Rishabh, you see, there are 19 state legislatures in India which have less than 10% women members. States like Mizoram and Himachal Pradesh have zero representation of women. Now, these statistics are extremely alarming, and something has to be done. This represents the women coming forward is a watershed moment in the sense that they don't just get to take part in decision making, in not just being a symbolic part of decision making, but actually making laws that affect women. Because there are so many times we have seen in parliament that we have to amend laws because because the lawmakers haven't really thought much how it will affect women in general, and that has really impacted the growth story of women in India. And as Joitma ji said very rightly, that this is not just an Indian problem; it's a global problem. We still have had one woman prime minister. United States is yet to have a woman prime minister. So I think India will lead by example for the rest of the world if this happens.
Okay, well, for sure. You mentioned we've had a woman prime minister. We've had women presidents. We are yet to have a woman chief justice, a woman army chief. But then this Rajalakshmi Joshi, let me get to the political point first. In practice, the statement from the prime minister is not making a case for it because the case for it has already been well established. The fact that it could not be done for 30 years is the strange stigma of politics in this country, that nobody bothered to do it because of political expediency. But in practice, are we going to see the Congress and BJP vote together as one?
Hello, Rishabh, and I hope that this will be one of those rare moments where all political parties, not just the BJP and the Congress, all of them come together and they vote in favor of this bill. And I see that happening more because, nowadays the women factor has become a very important aspect in electoral politics. So that also could be a reason where they may not want to alienate this women voter base. So that is the reason also why political parties may want to not look on the other side of the fence. So then that could be ironically a reason why they could actually vote in favor of this. But seriously speaking, yes, it is very much the need of the day, and I really hope that they put all their political differences aside,
Okay.
and bring all the stakeholders.
Okay, the time passes by. So for people watching the broadcast, let me put a little bit of context before we go back to election coverage. So the context is that 3 years ago, in 2023, the concept of 33% reservation of women as law has already been passed. Okay, so that was the milestone of 2023. That 33% reservation in parliament as a principle has already been cleared. Now, in order to put that into practice, you need to make other changes, and this bill, which is coming up for vote on the 16th of April, will implement the principle for the 2029 general elections, which is not a long way off. We're just 3 years away. Okay, so in 3 years, it is now guaranteed that 1/3 of parliamentarians will be women, which automatically, Joyita Basu, means that in the past, where too often we've seen that, at the local level, panchayati level, where sarpanches are supposed to be women and all that, we've just simply seen family members, wives, sisters, daughters put forth. Are we going to see something substantively different? That this is actually going to create a crop of a whole new generation of women parliamentarians, women politicians?
Well, Rishabh, there is no escaping the family factor. Okay, there is going to be. But given the extent, 33%, even those politicians who are totally into, we are talking about nepotism, these politicians will also have to introduce women in the, they will have to field women who go beyond the family. How many leaders, how many politicians will have enough women in their families so that they can field and fill up all the seats? It's not going to be. And it is too much of an eyesore if that happens. So it is bound to, yes, what we are going to witness is a new crop of women leaders coming up, and that is very good. Good for the discussion, the narrative, the discourse, the political discourse in the country. It's very good for that.
Okay. So I have to address one more subject before I go back to election coverage, because it's an important one. And let me, Joyita, start with you and go across everyone. Should we increase the number of parliamentary seats, constituencies in India by 33%? Joyita, should we do it? Has the time come?
Yes, we have to. I think the new Lok Sabha, they have already made provisions for increase. And I think after delimitation, whatever the process, constitutional process is, yes, because you see what happens, even in terms of administering these constituencies, even after for the MPs and all, think of some of the constituencies are so huge. 7 assembly seats, 8 assembly seats, and
Okay.
they're really,
So
really
Joyita says
huge.
yes, we should. Okay, Raja Lakshmi Joshi, same thought. Is this then an opportunity to also look at something we haven't changed since 1950, the number of seats in India's parliament?
Yes, Rishabh, that is exactly the reason why this is going to be a historic session, because the BJP intends to not only make amendments to make sure that this bill is implemented and made a law. So it was not enough to just merely pass the women reservation bill. So it is also necessary to make sure that there is this delimitation happening, which was held up because of the census. So now there will be an amendment in that law to make sure that the delimitation will happen on the basis of the 2011 census. So because otherwise the census could take forever and the entire thing will be held up in a whole limbo. So
Okay.
that is the reason why this, I think, is very essential. And the government is making sure that this will definitely see the light of day, not say maybe in some time in the future, but in the
Okay.
upcoming election itself.
Okay. So the constitutional amendment, as I mentioned, was passed in 2023, the 106th amendment, and this bill will now operationalize it for the 2029 general elections. This bill is mandating 33% reservation for women. Now, the larger conversation, and Venkat Ryan can come in on this, sir, is this an opportunity? Because there's no debate left on women's reservation. The only question we can ask is, why did we wait so long? But is this an opportunity thereby to also now seriously consider before 2029 itself, which means within the next 3 years, to expand the number of parliamentary constituencies in India for the first time in our independent history?
Rishabh, there are going to be 820 Lok Sabha seats, and out of which one-third will be allotted to women. This has already been decided, and yesterday the cabinet held a meeting in which the 33% reservation for women in our assemblies also is going to be discussed when Parliament meets for the special session next week. So, I think it's about time that India did this, because there are at least 30 parliaments across the globe where women have one-third representation. In Indian assemblies, it's very sad that out of 4,200 MLAs, barely 400 are women. That is less than 10%. And India being the world's largest democracy, it's about time that we give our women due representation. And I do not see any party opposing this noble, legislation, in my opinion. Rishabh?
Okay, but that's the conundrum, and that's the conundrum right there, Mr. Venkat Narayan, because all parties are in principle supporting the 33% reservation for women, but the Congress is opposing the increase in parliamentary constituencies to 816. So then, is that the pretext for them to vote down this bill or attempt to vote it down, even though they might not succeed?
Rishabh, every second voter is a woman in our country, everywhere else in the world. I do not think that any sensible Congress leaders will do anything that will irritate or antagonize the 50% of the Indian electorate, for God's sake.
Okay.
I think common sense should demand that Congress comes on board and get on with it.
Okay, all right. Tanvi, And I put the conundrum to you as well, because 33% women's reservation also comes then with the increase of parliamentary seats to 816. Now, there is the Congress party that says we favor one but we oppose the other. Where do you see this going?
Look, from the perspective of from the perspective of administration, this is going to be a big challenge for the ruling government as to manage the budgets of the new parliament if there is demilitation that's happening. To accommodate so many members, they have to make all the arrangements. So these are some of the questions that the government needs to answer on the floor of the House. And these are relevant questions. This has nothing to do with the women reservation in particular. This is about how the parliament has to be run from after this happens, after the delimitation happens. So these questions the government needs to address for the opposition members. But I think it's a journey that India will have to take, whether now or whenever it has to, because it has to happen. So the problems will come, the challenges will be there. The onus is on the government to take the opposition on board. If you remember, it was last, I think, the all the decisions that the government and the opposition took together were during Mr. Jaitley's time. And post that, there hasn't been much consensus when it comes to passing all the laws together. So we have to see that who will become that Arun Jaitley for BJP now to make this happen.
Okay, the BJP, remember, has the numbers to get a bill passed in Parliament, no doubt about it, in both houses. Constitutional amendment slightly more complex. They require other parties to jump in because they require, 2/3 majority in both houses. So in principle, women's reservation is already a done deal. It's already been passed in 2023. The practice is where this special session of Parliament is being convened for, is to implement it while simultaneously increasing the Lok Sabha seats from 543 to 816. This is what the Prime Minister had to say. Listen in.
बहनों बेटियों से एक बात करना चाहता हूं। भारत ने तय किया है कि 2047 में जब हमारी आजादी के 100 साल होंगे, तब तक हमने विकसित भारत बना के रहना है। लेकिन मेरे 2-2.5 दशक के सरकार के मुखिया के रूप में जो मेरे अनुभव है, उस अनुभव के आधार से मैं कह सकता हूं कि हमें विकसित भारत का लक्ष्य हासिल करना है, तो हमें हमारी मातृशक्ति को, हमारी नारी शक्ति को, उनके पूर्ण सामर्थ्य का राष्ट्र के विकास में जोड़ना ही होगा। हमने कुछ वर्ष पहले नारी शक्ति वंदन अधिनियम पारित किया था और सभी राजनीतिक दलों ने सहमति से किया था और सबकी इच्छा है कि 2029 में जब लोकसभा के चुनाव होंगे, तब हमारे देश की नारी शक्ति को जनप्रतिनिधि के रूप में लोकसभा में, विधानसभाओं में 33% स्थान मिलना ही चाहिए। पिछले कुछ दिनों से हम सभी राजनीतिक दलों से बातचीत कर रहे हैं। ज्यादातर दलों ने समर्थन भी दिया है। एक बहुत ही सकारात्मक माहौल दिख रहा है। इन्हीं विषयों को लेकर के मैंने आज अखबारों में एक लेख लिखा है। मेरे अपने विचार मैंने साझा किए हैं, लेकिन मैं आज आपसे आग्रह करता हूं, आप इस लेख को जरूर पढ़ें, औरों को भी पढ़ने के लिए प्रेरित करें और हम सभी राजनीतिक दलों को प्रेरित करें, उनका उत्साहवर्धन करें कि वो उमंग के साथ 16, 17, 18 संसद में इस विशेष काम के लिए जब हम मिल रहे हैं, तो इसको पारित करें और सब मिल करके इसका जश्न मनाएं। चलिए, मैं ज्यादा समय नहीं लेता हूं। लेख पढ़ने के बाद आपके कमेंट जरूर मुझे मिलेंगे। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। मैं
Okay, so let's just address this very quickly once again. Okay, so the point of 33% reservation in India's parliament is a constitutional amendment, the 106th constitutional amendment that has already been cleared by both houses in 2023. Now, the point of question now is the implementation of this from 2029 general elections itself, the potential implementation of this in state assemblies, and the big point is, which is historic also because it's the first time in independent India that a meaningful total shift in parliamentary constituencies is going to happen. So let me go back to Joyita. Joyita, now yesterday the Prime Minister made a reassurance which has been the long standing issue for the southern Indian states that have been successful in stabilizing their population, that if a delimitation exercise is done pan-India, states like Tamil Nadu, which have 40 seats, for example, have a large representation in the Lok Sabha, will lose out on the pure population arithmetic. Now, a formula will have to be worked out. We don't yet know what that formula is in practice. Do you think it is inevitable now that this 816 seats is going to happen, that there is now enough momentum for it just to take place?
Yes, Rishabh, it has to happen. Because you see, when we are talking about women's reservation, I mean, I'm certain the men MPs, the parties, they are not willing to give up that kind of, the hold that they have. They think that they are the decision makers. So, I mean, they are not going to be, I mean, whatever the official stance of the respective parties might be, that yes, we are supporting women's reservation, but they will not like the fact that many of their seats they will be losing if women are coming in such large numbers. So, for their own good, they will be insisting on, it is good for them
Okay,
as well.
actually,
that
the
seat
the
number
formula
goes up.
makes it a bit more convenient because now because the number of parliamentary seats will go up, which means that there will be more people who will be elected to parliament, and the parliamentary seats aren't going up by 33%; they're going up by 50%. Okay, so you can argue that if you are a male politician in this country who's won a Lok Sabha election in the past 10 odd years, and you wish to win more, and you're worried about delimitation marking your constituency as a women's constituency, you'll have a neighboring constituency because more will be created. So that is to your benefit. But Tanvi Purti, has the government created a very neat bind for all political parties? Because if you need to vote in favor of women's reservation, you de facto also have to then agree to increasing the number of parliamentary seats. Is it a neat bind?
I don't think that even the political parties, all of them will be against the delimitation process. It benefits everybody, more representation and more chances of winning seats. I don't think that would be a problem. But of course, if southern states need to be taken into confidence, especially Tamil Nadu, because you have a very clear chance of Mr. Stalin coming to power again, and he won't be comfortable if his number of seats are reduced, or if the clear due is not given to his state. So that is, yes, that's why I said, it is yet to be seen how the government proposes that how the delimitation and the change in the number of elected member of parliament will be accommodated, because it's a huge budget that we are talking about. If we have think of the current budget of the parliament, and it will almost double, once the new parliament comes into session with delimitation. So government has a lot of explaining to do what they have on their mind with the process of delimitation, and only after that we will be able to assess what is right and what is wrong.
Okay, let me put the same question to Venkat Narayan. Venkat Narayan, we've been persisting with the system that independent India in 1947 and 1950, when we framed our constitution in 1951, 52, when we had our first elections, had a population of just under 400 million. Our population is now 1.4 billion. So it's gone up nearly 4x, 3.5x. but the number of parliamentary seats has remained pretty much exactly the same. We have a few seats which are vacant, remember, for POK. I think there are 4 parliamentary seats left vacant for POK, but have remained otherwise pretty much the same. So, in principle, do you think most of the political parties will get behind the fact that it'll be better to have more shots at becoming a member of parliament? All politicians have a selfish interest in backing this, do you think?
Rishabh, I have no doubt in my mind whatsoever that all political parties will come on board. That includes our friend Stalin of Tamil Nadu, if he comes back to power, because the men are not going to lose their seats as such. BJP does not have anybody of that kind who can take the opposition along. As a result, there is so much chaos in parliament. Not a single day passes without the Congress or some other opposition getting excited, staging a walkout, and overall confusion and all that. So
Okay.
I think the BJP has to find somebody or invent somebody who can, communicate with the opposition across the board and bring them on board, because this is very important, and it affects half of India's population. So the sooner the BJP gets down to business and, to communicate with
Okay.
the opposition leaders and bring them on board, the better it is for
Okay,
everybody.
so, all right.
Rishabh.
So let's boil it down before I take a quick break. This is the boiling down. The boiling down is 33% reservation for women as mandated by the 106th Constitutional Amendment has already been put into force in 2023. The operationalization of this is now to be discussed in a special parliamentary session that is going to happen on the 16th, 17th and 18th of this month. Now, you heard from our various speakers, everybody is on board with 33% reservation. The politicians have a selfish interest, many of them in the increased number of seats, that means increased number of odds of becoming a parliamentarian in the Lok Sabha. So now it boils down to Rajalakshmi Joshi, who gets how many seats? And do you think if it is exactly proportional, which means if 50% seats go up, they go up for everyone in every state. That means in Tamil Nadu, they go from 40 to 60. Okay? That as long as it's proportional, everybody will be on board.
Yes, Rishabh, definitely. I think that is how it is going to be, because Amit Shah ji has repeatedly assured everyone in the House that there will no state will be put to any inconvenience, or there will not be any injustice to anyone. Even today, if you look at it, it is not as if every state has the same number of parliamentarians or legislators as per the population. Like, for example, if you look at it, Sikkim has, say, maybe 6 to 7 lakhs of population per MP. And whereas a state like Rajasthan today has something like almost 30 lakhs per MP. So that is the kind of a discrepancy even today. So it is not as if, all these years.
Yes, the discrepancies do exist. Yes, so, it's not exact.
So I think that this kind of an understanding has to be there by the center as well as by the different political parties, that this kind of a situation is going to arise even in the future. So there will have to be some kind of an understanding, Rishabh. And I'm
all
sure
right, Tanvi, as long as it's proportional, which means exact, that every state gets the equivalent percentage of seats, not that Tamil Nadu stays at 40 and UP becomes 160. That if everybody just gets 50% more Lok Sabha seats, you can see everybody getting behind this.
But the government has to first of all really clarify the budget. It's not just the seats that they're going to increase. Every MP gets its own bungalow. Every MP gets so many benefits. How is the government going to allocate it? So we have to see how the government will adjust and explain to the people. We all are paying for their salary and for their benefits, right? Where is the money coming from? So that is a huge chunk of budget that will be allocated to them. So I'm really
actually, it's not a lot of money. The MP Lads Fund is the only thing that will be substantially affected. And if you do the math, another 300 seats at roughly 5 crore is about 1500 crore, which in the larger scheme of India's budget is actually not a lot of money. But yes, the devil is in the detail, is what Tanvi is trying to suggest. That the over arc, I don't think anybody has an opposition that yes, our population has gone up 4x. Let me give you an example. England, okay, which has a population of about 60 million, has 600 people in the House of Commons. Okay. So India has one of the worst representation ratios in the world, primarily because we were always a large country, and primarily secondarily because from 400 million we are now we've added 1 billion people since the first election was held in 1952. So Joyita, let's close it on this thought. Do you think as long as the government says okay 50% for everyone, it's not like somebody gets 5 seats, somebody gets 20 seats, every state simply gets 50% more parliamentary seats, will that, you think, be good enough to win everyone around?
I think so, Rishabh, because I don't see any reason why, say, for example, Tamil Nadu, which has 40 odd seats right now or something, so they would suddenly want to get 120 seats. I mean, that doesn't make sense. And why UP, for example, which has 80, why it should not be getting more than 85 seats? So there has to be a proportional representation, and there has to be, I think 50% is a good idea. It increases by 50% for every state. But then they will have to see whether a lot of calculation will be involved to see whether that is exactly matching up to that 800.
Yeah, because if you do it from population metrics, then it's a political dead end, because obviously the number of seats in the north will go up substantially and the number of seats in the south will not go up substantially. Okay, it is going to be a long and complex conversation. It seems to me that the momentum is suggesting that this is going to happen. The 33% reservation is now a done deal. It's going to happen. But it has been clubbed in its implementation with the increasing number of seats in parliament. It seems to me that it is likely to take place. But of course, the final prerogative is for the House to vote, which is going to happen most probably on the 17th or the 18th of April. We take a very quick break. Back on the other side in a minute.